Yeah, well, that's what it was all about, was being flexible enough to pivot with what was going on in the marketplace. And, John, this was an experience, and I know you can relate to this, and, your entire audience can as well. What happened was a blessing in disguise came along, and I didn't know it was a blessing when this experience was going on. So, by the way, when we say private money, I'm not talking about hard money or any kind of institutional money.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Connor.
So here's what happened. I tell you how it didn't happen. I just didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, I think I'm going to go raise some private money. No, it didn't work that way. In fact, I didn't even know what private money was prior to needing it.
And so Jay, with that said, I mean, you made the distinction between hard and private. And to your point, I think a lot of people may not know that. Can you actually just define the differences of private money and hard money for all of our listeners?
Sure. So first of all, hard money is typically a broker of money. A hard money lender is typically a person or a company that goes out and raises private capital from individuals, human beings, and they have those individuals invest in their hard money fund, okay? And then they will loan that money out to real estate investors, and they make their money by charging higher interest rates than they're borrowing from the private lenders. They make money by origination fees or points. And so here's the big differences. A private lender is an individual, a human being that loans money to real estate investors, either from their investment capital or from their retirement accounts, as opposed to a hard money broker or hard money lender. Hard money broker is typically a middle person. They're charging much higher interest rates. Right now, the average interest rate where we are today is between 12 and 14% from a hard money lender. Some are lower, 10%, some are higher, but 12 to 14 is your average. Private money from individuals is 8%, right? Hard money lenders charge points, origination fees. Private lenders don't. There's no points or origination fees. So it just puts us so much more in control. For example, another distinction is a hard money lender is going to only advance you a percentage of your purchase price, whereas private lenders loan to me all the time 100% of purchase price. And if there's going to be renovations or rehabbing involved, I get all that money up front. So your credit score has got nothing to do with it in the world of private money. Hard money lenders are going to always pull your credit. There's no verification of income because they are collateral loans. So the bottom line, as you know, John, the bottom line is private lenders, we're doing business with individuals, whereas with hard money lenders make the rules and we are doing business by their rules. Like in this world of private money, we structure deals to where there's no monthly payments or semi-annual payments. Of course, in the world of hard money, they determine how often your payment's going to be. And then finally, at least for this second, the hard money lender is going to set the length of the term on the note, right? In this world of private money, we set the term. Is it going to be 12 months? Is it going to be 2 years? Is it going to be 5 years? So it puts us as the borrower and real estate investor in the driver's seat.
I love it. Great insights right there, and appreciate you breaking down the differences between hard money and private money. And just to recap that real quick, hard money is going to come from a fund or an institution, right? These are professionals who are lending money to make money. This is their business, versus private money is an individual, a person that you're working with, who they're not necessarily in the business of loaning money, but they will certainly be interested in an investment opportunity. And that's the reason they're doing it. With the private money, you get to set all the terms. With the hard money, they're setting those terms. So you have a lot more flexibility when it comes to the private money. Now, you were starting to talk to us about how you actually uncovered this private money opportunity. Maybe you can tell us more there.
Sure. So I remember it like it was yesterday, John. From 2003 to 2009, I relied on local banks, institutions, regular conventional loans to fund my deals. And I remember it so clearly. It was in January of 2009. I called up my banker. I had 2 deals under contract at the time, and I had had this conversation with my banker many, many times for 6 years. I was going to tell him, in fact, I did tell him where the properties were located, the amount needed for the funding, the after repaired values, and and when I wanted to close. Well, my banker, whose name at the time was Steve, he went silent on me, which is never a good sign when your banker or your significant other goes quiet, right? So finally, Steve cleared his throat and he says, "Jay, I'm sorry, but the bank has closed your line of credit." And I said, "What do you mean, Steve? They closed my line of credit?" I mean, bear in mind, we've had this relationship for 6 years. I've never been late on a payment. I mean, it's been beautiful. I've made the bank money. They've made me money, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm being cut off from the bank with no notice. He went on to say, "Jay," he says, "we're just not loaning. The bank is not loaning money out to real estate investors anymore these days." Bearing in mind, that was in 2009. And as you alluded to, John, we all know what was going on between 2008 and 2009 with the global financial crisis. I just didn't know I was part of that crisis until Steve told me I no longer had funding for my deals. So we actually still have landlines in North Carolina. I was talking to Steve, I hung up the phone, and I thought to myself, what in the world am I going to do? Because I had these 2 deals that represented over $100,000 in profit. So I hung up the phone, I sat here for a moment, and I tell you what, the mantra that I developed and created and started repeating in my mind when I hung up the phone was, "Jay, it's impossible to fail unless I choose to quit." And that goes for everybody. You can't fail until you choose to quit. So I picked the phone back up and I called my buddy Jeff, who lived in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. He was a fellow investor, real estate investor, good friend of mine. I called up Jeff. I told him what had just happened. He said, "Well, Jay, welcome to the club." I said, "What club?" He said, "The club of getting cut off from the banks and losing your lines of credit." I said, "Well, what are we going to do? What are you doing?" He says, "Well, there's this thing called private money." I said, "What's private money?" So I never heard of private money, never heard of private lending, never heard of self-directed IRAs. So let me tell you, John, I went to studying private money right away. I learned about it. And in less than 90 days, I was able to attract $2,150,000 in new funding. And of course, in the world of syndication, $2,150,000 is not a lot of money, but it was a lot of money to me because I only had $1 million line of credit at the bank that I had just lost. And so I put my program on steroids. I started teaching people about private money. There's really 3 categories of where you find private lenders: your warm market, your expanded warm market, and existing private lenders. I'll talk more about that if you want me to. But I put on my teacher hat and I started teaching people that I knew and had some kind of relationship with. And very quickly, people started chasing me and trying to write me checks. By the way, don't ever let a private lender write you a check. No, no, no. We'll talk about how that works. But anyway, very, very quickly, John, I had more money for funding available to me than I had ever had in my life. And you know what's interesting? This was a huge blessing in disguise. As you recall, John, back in 2008, foreclosures and 2009, foreclosures were at an all-time high. But here's the deal. Real estate investors could not take advantage of those bank-owned properties unless you had the cash. The banks and mortgage companies weren't loaning money out on them. You had to have the cash. So with this blessing in disguise, I was able to triple our business the next 12 months by simply just having the cash and the private money available.
It's amazing, man. That's amazing, Jay. So just playing that back, you talked about really getting cut off from the banks and from these lenders. And instead, you talk to your buddy, Jeff. Jeff tells you what he's doing, working with private lenders or private investors, right? So now you're tapping into private money. You're able to raise over $2.1 million in 90 days. And now you've got a brand new way of growing your wealth and growing these opportunities, and you triple your business during that time frame. Now, as we talked about private money, again, we've got everyone from single family investors to multifamily syndicators who we all know it's important to be able to attract and grow with private money and private investors. How were you able to do that? Because from being introduced to this concept and 90 days later, you've got $2.1 million raised. Obviously, you had to have either some relationships or some connections, or you had to figure out where to start. So where did you start?
Yeah. So I started, first of all, with my mindset. So I decided right up front, I'm not going to chase. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to try to sell. I'm not going to try to talk anybody into anything. I'm going to first out start educating people that I have a relationship with. People in my any kind of relationship, people in my cell phone, people on my email list, people that are on my Facebook friends, etc. Any kind of social networks, people that I go to church with, people that I go to the Rotary Club with, right? And so I made a list of all my connections, right? And so my first step was making my list of people that I wanted to educate, that I had some kind of relationship with. So first I started making a list of retired people, because, there's two primary categories of where people are going to get their money from to lend to us as real estate investors. They're either going to lend to us from their retirement accounts, their retirement money, or they're going to lend to us from their just liquid investment capital. Well, the reason I started out by making a list of people that I've got any kind of connection with that are retired, well, there's a good chance they've got retirement money, pensions, 401ks from a previous employer, retirement funds in the stock market, et cetera. So I started with them. Now, I educated myself very, very quickly and very, very well on what self-directed IRAs are. The reason that was so important is because I knew over half of the private money out there that's available is typically coming from retirement accounts when you're talking about doing business with just individuals, right? Not institutional money, but individuals. So I made my list. And then the second thing that I did is I contacted my list of potential private lenders, and I had a simple, casual conversation with them. So step two was a casual conversation. They could take place over the phone or take place in person. And pretty much the outline of that conversation after a little chit chat and, pleasantry was, let's say, John, let's say you and I have known each other, for years. You're a friend of mine, whatever. And I call you up, we have a little chit chat. I say, John, as you may know, I've been investing in real estate these days, and I'm getting ready to open up my business to people I know and trust, because I'm positioning my company, my real estate investing company, to take advantage of the tidal wave of foreclosures that are going on right now and that are opening up. And I'm paying insane high rates of return, John, but unless you say yes to the following question, there's no need for me to give you any additional information. And that question is, do you have investment capital or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return safely and securely? That's called the magic question. Do you have investment capital or retirement funds not giving you a high rate of return safely and securely? Now, John, if you say no, I know you're broke, because the local CD is right now only paying 0.17%. That's less than 0.25% in a 12-month certificate of deposit. But if you say yes, which means you do have investment capital or retirement funds that you're not happy with the returns, then I go to step three and I send to you my 16-minute audio titled Stress-Free Investing. That's one of the first things I did, John, in order to put on my teacher hat. You see, I didn't want to go around town chasing people, talking to people, spending all that time. I just want to do a little bit of pre-qualification and then send them my 16-minute audio. Now, back in 2009, it was a CD. Today, it's an MP3 and also an audio and video on YouTube. So we just send it to them. And that audio that I titled Stress-Free Investing gives an overview of what private lending is. It doesn't try to sell or talk anybody into what my program is. It just gets them introduced to it and gets their greed glands starting to swell up in their neck to where they want to chase me. Step 4, I teach them what the private lending program is. If they express interest, I don't chase anybody. And at the end of that 20-minute conversation of explaining how my private lending program works, then they want to know how they can go to work. They tell me how much they got to work with, whether it's investment capital or in retirement funds. And then, step 5, they've given me a verbal commitment. Then I go find a deal just as soon as possible. Now, there's a caveat, John, to those 5 steps. Let me give those 5 steps real quickly one more time. Number 1, now this is just for your warm market. This is just for people that you've already got some kind of connection with. Step 1, make your list the way I did it. Step 2, have a short, casual conversation, which is what we call a pre-qualifying conversation to see if they're interested in information. Number 3, send them info, which in my case is a 16-minute audio. Step number 4, teach them what the program is. What's your interest rate that you're paying? What's the length of the note? How are they protected in case you lose your mind and move to the Caribbean, right? How do they have virtually no risk? So number 2 is teach them, number 3 is send them the information. Number 4 is teach them. And then number 5, you go find a deal. You and I were talking before the show, John. I shared with you, the worst time to attract private money is when you need it for a deal, right? You already sound desperate, right? So we teach them. So they give us a verbal pledge. And step 5 is then we come back with the deal. I never pitch a deal. I never try to talk anybody into a deal. If it's a single family house, I call them up and I only give them 4 pieces of information. John, if you're my private lender, I call you up and I say, hey, John, I got great news. I can now put your money to work. I already know how much you got. I already know if it's retirement funds. If it's retirement funds, I've introduced you to my self-directed IRA company that I've got a relationship with. I got great news. I can now put your money to work. I've got a property in Newport after repaired value of $200,000. Funding required is only $150,000. You see, I know you got that because you already told me. Now, funding requires only $150,000. Closing is next Thursday. I need you to wire your funds by next Thursday to my attorney's trust account. End of conversation. I didn't ask them if they want to do the deal. Of course they want to do the deal. They've been waiting for the phone call because their money ain't making no money until you call them and put their money to work. Now, that was just a lot I said right there, John. Unpack that for me a little bit.
It was, man. Listen, lots of great information. And you already recapped the 5 steps, so I won't recap that a second time. But I think there are a few things that jump out to me, right? So first and foremost, we're talking about having a conversation with that warm audience. These are people that you know, making that list, reaching out to people that you know to have that pre-qualification discussion. And the thing that jumps out to me was that you sent them something. That's a powerful insight. I want to make sure any listener who is either attracting capital for deals or looking to work with private money, Jay just gave you a really, really great piece of insight. If you can send them content that you created that educates them further on what the process is, how it works, and gets them ready. And the reason I love it, and I think this is probably one of the reasons you do it, is it allows you to step back a little bit and let them self-select and educate themselves. Because if you're doing all the education, right, as far as the person in front of the room and you're doing all the education, you don't know if they're really comprehending it, if they're really understanding it, whether or not it's truly for them or not. And you really do need to give them a moment to process that information. So if you have a piece of content that you can send them, that gives them the chance to take it all in, to process, and then they can start to formulate questions if they have questions. So I just love that little piece of information that you shared there. But then also going into that follow-up conversation, educating them, and then ultimately getting them an opportunity to say, hey, I've got a great news. We found a deal that looks great. Here are the key things that we need. And boom, you just need to go ahead and wire your funds and we're ready to move forward. I love the fact that in there, you did not ask for money. You did not say, hey, do you want to invest? Share a little bit more there, because you said, hey, I already know how much they got. And of course, they want to invest because they're not making much money anywhere else. How are you able to move forward with so much confidence in that conversation?
Absolutely. Well, I practice it and I teach my students all the time. The most stupid question I could ever ask a new private lender. Now, if I've got a private lender, I've got 44 private lenders right now, 44 private lenders funding our deals, either from their investment capital or their retirement funds. And by the way, here's an actionable item. Establish a relationship with a self-directed IRA company that you can refer your new private lenders to, or potential private lenders that have retirement funds that want to learn how to transfer their funds over and earn unlimited money in returns per year, at least tax deferred, if not tax free and penalty free. Anyway, I digress, but that's an important point, right? So when I say the most stupid question you could ask is if they want to do the deal. Well, first of all, they've already told me how much money they got ready to go. They've already told me they love the program. I didn't ask them if they love the program. I teach them my program. Okay. I teach them my program. And when I get the end of it, it's a 20-minute conversation. Like if you can read, you can do it. So at the end of my conversation of explaining and teaching my private lending program, I finish. I shut up. Done. And now if they have any questions, they ask me or whatever. But typically at the end of that conversation, the question I get is, well, how do I start? Do I write you a check? What's next? Right. And so they've told me, and by the way, they don't write me a check, right? They only send funds to the closing agent or the real estate attorney that's handling the deal. So they've told me how much I got. So if I call them up and say, well, here's the deal. Do you want to fund this deal? Well, you see, if I ask that question, now they've got doubt in their mind. Well, should I fund this deal? Should I not fund it? Well, of course they should fund the deal, because the deal that they're going to fund meets the criteria of the program that I taught them. For example, I typically, if it's a single family house and it needs major rehab, I typically don't borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value. Well, notice that little example I gave a moment ago. I got a property over here with an after repaired value of $200,000. The funding required is $150,000. Did you hear that? That was 75% of the after repaired value. So I'm not bringing to this private lender any kind of deal that is not going to meet what I already taught them that they're going to be funding. So 4 things I tell them after I got good news. Number 1, 4 things to tell them over the phone. Number 1, where is the property located? They could care less the street address. What's the community? Is it Newport, Morehead City, Beaufort, Havelock, whatever? Number 2 piece of information is what's the after repaired value? Now, I'm talking here in the world of single family houses. Obviously, this is different in the world of syndication, but the money's the same. It's the same money. It's just a matter of how are you structuring the opportunity and how are they protected? So in this case, where's the property located? Number 2, what's the after repaired value? Number 3, what's the funding required? And number 4, when do you need to wire your funds? Boom, that's it. And it's like, again, that's just another example of the mindset. I'm not chasing, I'm not begging, I'm not selling. I'm teaching. And then now this is in the warm market, people you have a relationship with. I'm teaching, and then I come back with good news and they fund the deal.
Hey, great stuff, Jay. For my apartment investors, I think if you want to take Jay's second question on what's the ARV, if you want to flip that, the way I'm interpreting that question is this a good deal, right? And does this meet the criteria that you've been telling me about. So if that's the case, think of another way of answering that question, whether that is, again, based on the return projections or, what you're going in dollar value is, whatever it is that you lean on. Think of it that way, because I think ultimately they're trying to just confirm it. Okay, this is a good deal. This lines up with what you've been telling me up to this point. Jay, great information right there. You said something a couple of times. I want to make sure we address it directly. You said you do not have investors write you a check. Why? And what's the reason behind that? And what's the concern that could happen to someone if they do write a check?
Yeah, well, there's multiple reasons as to why I would never want a private lender to write me a personal check. And by the way, these new private lenders that you're teaching, how this works, they don't know. They don't know, right? There's a 5-letter word that starts with T in this world that's got a lot to do with you getting funding, and that's called the word trust. So first, we want to know how to do it to protect them, to protect ourselves. So liability and risk is like reduced down to very, very minimal. So first of all, the private lender is not going to write me a check personally, because first of all, it's not me personally that's borrowing the money. It's my LLC. It's my entity. It's whatever entity that is actually purchasing or investing or developing the property. So first of all, their check is going to be written to the entity that they are investing in. Like, in the world of single family houses, in contrast to syndication, they would be right. My LLC buys the houses, right? So the private lender is loaning money and it's being secured by that property. We call these one-offs. You got a private lender or a couple of private lenders that are loaning money and it's being backed by that real estate that you're buying, right? So that's first of all, I'm not borrowing the money, my entity is. Secondly, if they write you a check personally, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. First of all, you're not protecting them. And second of all, you're putting yourself out to dry, because if something goes to awry, now not only is your investment company on the hook, you personally on the hook.
Yeah. And I'll add one more thing to that. If they are using a retirement account, you want to make sure that they're writing the checks out of the correct account as well. Because if they're using money from that retirement account and then, somehow writing a check from their personal account or somehow mixing that up, it could get really, really messed up, and it could jeopardize that tax haven that they have with that retirement account as well. So really great insight. So, but you definitely want to make sure that no personal checks, everything is from the entity to the entity, and just keep it clean when you're doing that. One last point there. You talked about that the investment or the loan is secured by the property. How are you doing that? Are you doing a promissory note, or what are you doing from a legal standpoint to structure and protect their investment?
Great question, John, and I'm glad you asked it. So here's how you protect your private lender when, say, doing single family houses, or actually it could be if you're doing small apartments, duplexes, triplexes, et cetera. So here's the documentation. First of all, obviously, if we are investing in a property, we're not going to invest in a property unless you at least have either an appraisal, or if it's a single family house, I'm at least going to have a comparative market analysis of an after repaired value from my realtor or whoever's doing my valuations. So I have that on hand in case the private lender wants to see it. Interestingly enough, since 2009, I've never had one of my private lenders even ask to see the appraisal or ask to see the comparative market analysis. They're trusting me to be investing in, well thought out, researched, all the vetting and, due diligence has been done before I'm going to be investing in this property. The documentation, however, that the private lender always receives on every deal that we do with them. Number one, the promissory note. Well, what's the promissory note? Very simple. The promissory note lays out who's the borrower. That's our entity. Who's the lender? That's the private lender. Typically, they're lending in their individual name. They don't have an LLC that they're loaning from. Typically, it's just them. We call it mom and pop money. So the promissory note lays out the borrower, who's the lender, what's the interest rate, okay? What's the term? What's the length of the note? What's the frequency of payments? Now, you see, we can structure and you can structure deals to where you don't make any payments at all until you cash out on the deal. You see, you're in control. You're in the driver's seat. You get to determine that. But what's the frequency of payments? Now, in all of my promissory notes, I give my lenders what's called, and this is only in the world of single family houses, all right? Not syndication, but in the world of single family houses, I give them what's called a 90-day call option, okay? Which means if they have an emergency come up and they need to call their note due early, all they got to do is give me a 90-day notice. And I don't even need that. I can replace their money in a week, but give me a 90-day notice. That gives me plenty of time to replace their loan or their investment with us with another private lender. That just lets them sleep better at night. They know they can get their money back early if they need to. But remember, it's your program. You don't have to offer a 90-day call option. I just know I'm able to raise more money if I do. So that's the promissory note. All right. In addition to that, they get depending on the state that the property is in, they're going to get either a deed of trust, like that's how it is here in North Carolina, or they're going to get a mortgage. One and the same thing. It just gives your lender the legal right to foreclose in case you don't keep up your end of the bargain, right? So people ask me all the time, well, Jay, how, particularly a new student, who's going to loan me money if I've never borrowed money before from private lenders? And I'll tell you why they're going to loan you money if you've never borrowed money before, because, and this is a writer downer, if you don't pay the private lender, the property does. If you don't pay the private lender, the property does. Now, that only works in the world of where you're giving a mortgage or a deed of trust to protect, their loan to you. And then finally, they're also named on the insurance policy for the property as the mortgagee. Very important. So, when you borrow money from a bank for a house, the bank is named as the mortgagee. In this case, with private lenders, they're named as the mortgagee. The reason for that is it protects them. If there's a claim, an insurance claim or a total loss, well, the insurance company is going to make the check payable to your private lender and to you. So you see, the private lender's got to sign off on that check, so they are protected. And then finally, they're also named on the title policy as an additional insured in case there's any title problems down the road. Now, who prepares these documents? Not you, not your assistant. The real estate attorney prepares all these documents for every closing. And I've got a simple document that I and my students use, which is called the Closing Agent's Instruction Sheet. It's one little document. It's got 12 lines to fill in. Who's the borrower, who's the lender, principal loan amount, et cetera. We email that to our real estate attorney's paralegal. Our closing documents are prepared within 24 hours.
Jay, great information right there. And I know you've got a lot more available on your website. As a matter of fact, you've got a free download, this PDF that you've written, great insights there. If you all want to check that out, it's jconner.com/money guide. And that's filled with more information, kind of walk you through that stress-free investing strategy that you just talked about there. But just real quick on that money guide, tell our listeners what they'll get when they download that.
Sure. And just to make sure when you're listening, you know that I'm a ER, not a OR. That's JAY, www.jayconner.com/money guide. And I just finished writing it. As a matter of fact, the title is 7 Reasons Why Private Money Will Skyrocket Your Real Estate Business and Help You Build Incredible Wealth. So here's the deal. Whether you are a brand new investor or you are a seasoned real estate investor, this guide that I just finished writing will put you on the fast track doing private money just like I do, to where people will be chasing you instead of you chasing the money. John, it's been in my experience, every time I chase money, it eludes me. It escapes me. It disappears. But when I have a servant's heart and I put on my teacher hat, now the money is chasing us.
There you go, Jay. I appreciate you giving us that feedback and guidance and great words to live by, especially if you're looking to attract capital for your deals. Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Well, one failure that comes to mind, John, is when I first started investing in real estate way back in 2003. In my first 12 months, I made one huge mistake that I've not made since. I invested in a property over on the beach. It was a resort property. I invested in a property with the intention of flipping the property. Here's the mistake I made. I did not calculate what rental income I could bring in case I was stuck holding that property to where that rental income would cover my carrying cost. Oh boy, was that a big lesson. Because when I invested in that, the value had started coming down, as is very volatile in resort and luxury areas. And so it became a bloodbath, John, a bloodbath. I had to start renting that property out to stop the bleeding, but the monthly income did not cover my carrying cost. And so I carried that property much longer than I had anticipated. So the lesson learned is and was, when investing in real estate, even if your intention is to get in and get out, be sure and calculate that property will carry itself in case you're holding it for the long term.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Dealmachine.com. So dealmachine.com, you've probably heard of it. In fact, I'm friends with the founder of that app. And the way dealmachine.com works is you download the app, and if you are a real estate investor that does this strategy called driving for dollars, looking for properties that are vacant or run down, you or your assistant or somebody on your team just takes a picture of that property, and because of the software in the app, it automatically does a skip trace and starts mailing postcards to the owner of that property.
All right. Give me a book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Well, that would be my book.
All right. Besides your book.
Besides my book, actually, I have given this book more to in the past year than any other book, and that is The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver. Have you heard of that book, John?
I have. I've read it. It's a really, really good book. You should definitely check that one out.
Yeah, and the author has now 4 in the series, but I recommend starting with the red cover. The red cover, that's the original. It's a parable that will, well, first of all, let me tell you who should not read this book. Here's who should not read this book. If you do not, at the core of your heart, have a servant's heart, if you're really not interested in helping other people, don't waste your time by getting the book. But if you really are interested in helping other people and making an impact, order and get The Go-Giver.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
StairMaster, 22 minutes, 300 calories. And I do it actually not for my health, but for the blood in my brain flow. When I finish StairMaster, in fact, it's actually a StairMaster, John. It's 20 years old, right? And so I get on the StairMaster, and when I don't get on the StairMaster, I'm not on top of my game as much as I can be. It keeps me focused. I get more done, and I'm relaxed while I'm working. Makes all the difference. And if somebody's not into StairMastering or that kind of thing, take a walk for 1 mile in the morning, a walk for 1 mile. You'll be creative. You'll have creative ideas come to your mind, and it will make all the difference in your day and your productivity.
Give me your number one insight for attracting private money.
Never ask for money, never chase, never beg, never sell. Put on your teacher hat, educate people, and the money will chase you.
There you go. All right, let's lighten the mood. I know you are in Moorhead, North Carolina, and all over in that area. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Well, that's going to be hard to do, John, because my wife, Carol Joy, and I never cook at home. We always go out to eat. So the first one that comes to my mind, oh my word, there's so many here. It's Moorhead City, by the way. Moorhead City, North Carolina. I'm going to say Soundside Restaurant in Morehead City. Miss Barbara and her daughter, Lauren, run it, and it is some mighty good food.
There you go. I love it. Jay, you gave us a lot of great information breaking down what private money is, how to attract it, what not to do if you are looking to attract private money, and also just understanding the differences there about how you can actually help not just yourself, but help other people get their money to work and get much better returns than they can get right now, sitting in a savings account or a CD, and in many cases, even in the stock market. So really great insights right there. Again, for anyone who wants to download that money guide, go to jconner.com. That's Conner, Conner, jconner.com/money guide, capital M, capital G, money guide. And Jay, I just want to thank you again for coming on Multifamily Insights. You gave us great information, and I hope you have a great day.
John, God bless you. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/money guide. That's jconner.com/money guide. And download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/money guide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.